Trying to scratch the screens. Hey guys, I'm Tom the Tech Chap, and right now there are so many great phones to choose from. But over the last couple of months, I've been using, which one is it? This one, the S22 Ultra. Using it in, the real world, including testing both Snapdragon and Exynos versions, also comparing it to other flagships, seeing what changes that big March update made, and also considering whether the cheaper S22 Plus is actually a better option. So it all comes down to one simple question: should you actually buy this? And also, is it better than the competition? I guess that's two questions. But also, if you have already bought one of these yourself, then let me know what you make of it, the good and the bad. Share your experiences in the comments. Now, there's always a ton of hype around a new flagship Samsung phone, but I'll tell you what, I haven't come across a more feature-packed phone. From the S Pen to supporting Wi-Fi 6E, having dual telephoto lenses, which gives us, frankly, the best zoom on any phone. Also, the fantastic Expert RAW mode, which nowhere near enough people are using. We also get solid battery life that really only falls short of the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Plus we have the brightest screen on any phone I've tested, which now the sun has finally reappeared after its 6-month hibernation here in the UK, makes it easier to use outdoors. So by combining the best of the Note series, this is the Note 20 Ultra, and the S series, this is the S21 Ultra, imagine these guys had a baby, I'm not quite sure the logistics of that, but it brings us to this, the S22 Ultra, which is effectively the Note 22 Ultra, but without microSD card support. But still, for me, this is the best all-round flagship Android phone that you can buy. But it's not perfect, it is very expensive, and there's a few things about it that do kind of annoy me. For example, as I'm sure you guys know, the S22 series comes with either an Exynos 2200 or a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chip. So a couple of days ago, I did my big comparison video and found that the Snapdragon was a good 10% faster, particularly in games, where it also had better support and more graphics options available versus the Exynos. Okay, this is Future Tom jumping in for a second because Call of Duty has actually been updated to support more graphics options, so that is now on par with the Qualcomm version, which I'm using to film this on, but PUBG still hasn't. So generally, games are still better optimized, or at least more quickly optimized, for the Qualcomm version. Now the good news is that I did find battery life to be pretty much the same between them, although I know other people have had different experiences, particularly with the Exynos, where it seems we're having a bit of a chip lottery perhaps. But there is still a noticeable difference when it comes to the camera. Definitely have a watch of the full video, but my takeaway overall is that the Snapdragon version is still superior. Maybe not as significantly as in the past, but it's the one I'm going to use going forward. It is frustrating, to be honest. No one should have an inferior or even a superior version of this if we're paying the same amount of money. Most people, 95% of people, won't really notice the difference, but if you are paying £1,150 for this and you are buying the Ultra because presumably you're a bit of an enthusiast and you want all these, bells and whistles, then it may make you consider buying something like the Oppo Find X5 Pro or the OnePlus 10 Pro or the Xiaomi 12 Pro, because with these, wherever you are guaranteed a Qualcomm Snapdragon chip. Credit to Samsung for giving Qualcomm some strong competition, but it shouldn't be at our cost. And speaking of the competition, let's talk about price, because as I mentioned, this will cost you £1,150 here in the UK, which is an awful lot of money, and for that, we only get 8 gigs of RAM and 128 storage, which is pretty stingy, considering for £100 less, you get 12 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage on the Find X5 Pro, and even the iPhone 13 Pro Max is £100 cheaper. Now we do have RAM Plus, where you can assign up to 8 GB of storage to help boost the RAM, which does mitigate it a little bit, and realistically, this isn't something most of us could really tell the difference between. But storage is an issue, especially as this doesn't support microSD cards, so I would probably recommend paying the extra 100 to get 256, which also bumps the RAM up to 12 GB. Although to be fair, Samsung does give us more options than most phones, offering up to 1 TB of storage if your name is Mr. Moneybags. And also, of course, we don't get a charger in the box either, so if you want to take advantage of that faster 45-watt charging, then you'll have to pay Samsung £45 for the privilege. Samsung do offer some pretty decent trade-in schemes, which are definitely worth looking at, but given what the competition is offering for similar or less money, I feel like they could do better, especially with the likes of Xiaomi eating away at their market share. Now, since the S22 Ultra supports Wi-Fi 6E, let me introduce you to today's sponsor, NETGEAR's new flagship Orbi, the world's first quad-band mesh Wi-Fi 6E system. Orbi is known as a no-compromise, best of the best mesh system, and with their new 6E router and satellites, which come in a pack of 3 by the way, in either white or this very stealthy new black color, for devices like this that support 6E, they can now access the new 6 GHz spectrum, which is far less congested than 5 GHz, and so can help you get the fastest up to gigabit plus speeds. So I use the Orbi router for my American friends, and together with the 2 satellites, you can eliminate any dead zones in your home. In fact, it can cover up to a whopping 7,500 square feet, which I can tell you is several times bigger than my house, and right now I don't even come close to maxing out what this can do, so if, like me, you want the absolute best Wi-Fi performance for gaming, streaming, and browsing, definitely check out the new flagship Orbi, and I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to check it out. However, one thing that the iPhones and Oppos and OnePluses and Realmes and Xiaomis of the world don't offer is Bixby. Okay, no, not really. The S Pen. This, I think, is what really makes the S22 stand out. This really is the Note 22 Ultra in both design with those squared off corners and that embedded S Pen, which by the way has the fastest response time of any S Pen compatible device. And while I must admit I don't use it that often, maybe a few times a week, being able to use the S Pen as a remote trigger for the camera, or signing the odd document, or capturing GIFs like a video screenshot, it does come in handy. And if you are any kind of serious doodler, drawer, or designer, in apps like Sketchbook you can see just how much more precision you get with a pen over your chubby finger. So you're either thinking, yes, I love it, I need this in my life, or meh, probably not going to use it that much, in which case, I would seriously consider saving a couple $100 and going with the S22 Plus instead. So this is $950 and this is $1150 here in the UK, £200 more. And for that, you do get a bigger, higher resolution screen, the S Pen, better cameras, both front and back, plus that extra 10 times telephoto lens. So yeah, you are getting a fair bit more for your money with this, but if you're not bothered about the high resolution or having the best camera and the longest zoom, and also perhaps you prefer a slightly smaller, more comfortable phone because we have these rounded corners and it is 0.2 inches smaller, so it's a lot more comfortable to use, and you're not really fussed on the S Pen, then I think for most of my friends looking for a new Samsung phone or even a high-end Android, I would suggest the S22 Plus. Having said that, as unwieldy as the S22 Ultra can be, especially with a case, that big 6.8-inch Quad HD screen is absolutely glorious. And with the ridiculous 1750 nit brightness, including that nifty new extra brightness mode, as well as pretty good speakers, HDR10+ support, everything from gaming, movies, binge watching TechChap YouTube videos, it all looks fantastic. And actually, even multitasking with split screen apps is a comfortable experience. And I like this Labs feature that removes the notification bar and gives you a proper full screen when you are using 2 apps side by side. In fact, as someone who bought a Galaxy Z Fold 3 myself, and I do love the Fold, don't get me wrong, I would pick this every time. What I would like though, if Samsung are watching, is a dynamic or auto-switching resolution option. We have it for the frame rate, and other phones like the Find X5 Pro give us this auto-switch resolution option. It would be useful to adjust the resolution based on my battery life and usage pattern so I don't have to manually think about it. One minor gripe I have come across though is that the bottom firing speaker is noticeably louder and fuller versus the top one, which doubles as the speaker grill. So sometimes the sound can, well, sound a little bit one-sided, and I think the iPhone speakers are still a touch better. I also mentioned the glass, Gorilla Glass Victus Plus on both the front and the back, which is the only phone right now to have that, but as you can see from my Exynos version here, if I bring it up to the light, I have already scratched it quite badly. Probably from camera lenses in my pocket or maybe my keys. I know my friend Daniel over at Zone of Tech had a similar issue, and fortunately I haven't yet scratched my burgundy one, which I love this color by the way, but I would definitely recommend putting a case on it, not just for that, but if I actually demonstrate on a table, that gets quite annoying. The sticky outy lenses make it quite one-sided, so by putting a case on it, not only do you prevent those horrible scratches, and it's a bit more comfortable to hold, no more movement. Let's talk about this camera because I am pretty blown away by it, even more so actually after the recent March update. The edge detection of individual hairs in portrait mode, the ability to go from this to this thanks to the extra zoom lens. Realistically, anything up to 30 times actually looks quite good, and I find myself using it way more than I expected. and I even found that versus last year's S21 Ultra that zoom shots looked less processed. And that 3x optical zoom in particular gives you a great focal length for portrait shots. So having that ultra-wide, which doubles as a macro, together with the main and the dual telephoto lenses, just gives you so much versatility. And in fact, over the last few weeks, I've made in-depth camera comparisons with the Oppo Find X5 Pro and the iPhone 13 Pro Max. And while I must admit, I do still carry an iPhone 13 with me, mainly for video. You just can't beat its stabilization and smoothness of transitions between lenses. I do think that as an overall package, the S22 Ultra has the best camera setup on any phone. And also, one of the most underrated features of the S22 Ultra is this, the RAW Expert Photo app. And you download it from the Galaxy App Store, but Expert RAW is essentially the Pro mode. It gives you all the usual options for tinkering with the camera settings, but also, like Apple's Pro RAW mode on the iPhone, it also shoots multi-frame RAW photos. And with a little bit of editing in Lightroom or Snapseed, you can end up with some stunningly detailed shots with impressive dynamic range. So it's definitely worth having a play with if you are a keen photographer, but then again, the regular camera app and all of its modes, from single take to portrait video and director's view, even just as a simple point and shoot, this does a great job. And in my experience, it is a noticeable step up even compared to last year's S21 Ultra. One area I was a bit disappointed by though is low light video. It was surprisingly noisy and shaky, not really what I expected. The good news is this has got better. The March update has made quite a big difference, although as I say, I still think the iPhone is king when it comes to video. And also, there are some quite significant differences between the Snapdragon and Exynos models, particularly in very low light. And actually, this is one of the areas I think the Exynos does beat the Snapdragon with more effective noise reduction. But still, updates have made a difference, and video is now much better than it was when we reviewed this a few weeks ago. Actually, that March update did also fix one of my issues around Bluetooth connectivity. I know my friend SuperSaf also experienced this, and my Bluetooth headphones would often drop out, not since the March update, so that does seem to have been fixed. And they also addressed some performance issues where it would only run at full speed in benchmarking apps and not games. And also importantly, Samsung do promise 4 years of Android updates with this. But what about battery life? Well, I can tell you from my experience, mainly of using the Exynos version, I've only switched to this about a week ago, that I'm getting about 7 hours of screen on time, and by the end of a regular day, I have about 35% left at 11 PM. So with a bit of rationing, a day and a half is definitely achievable. And as I say, in my comparison, I didn't really see much difference between the two versions of the phone, which is good. So it is still up there with the best of them, but not quite reaching the heights of the iPhone. Although I do wish charging could be a bit faster, even with the 45-watt charger, which actually doesn't make that much difference even over the 25-watt. It'll top up to about 67% in half an hour, which is fine, but it is falling behind a lot of the Android competition. Also, bear in mind that like all phones, your experience may vary, plus you can expect your battery to improve with time as it learns your usage patterns. Now, as you can see, I do have quite a few phones here, so I am planning to create a big flagship phone battery rundown test very soon, so make sure you subscribe and stay tuned. Now, I have mentioned the iPhone a few times because right now I do carry both of these with me. I have SIM cards in both and I use them for different things. Usually I do wear an Apple Watch, and also I mostly work off this, a MacBook Pro 16, so I really do appreciate the Apple ecosystem, and also the video, the stabilization, and the incredible battery life in this. So those are all big pulls towards the iPhone, but at the same time, Samsung also has a pretty decent ecosystem with their Galaxy Watches and excellent Galaxy Buds to their tablets like the new S8 Plus. But not only that, I think this is a much more functional phone. And not just because of the S Pen, but being able to have, apps side by side, split screen multitasking, which I cannot believe we still don't have on the big iPhone or any iPhone really. And also, if you do like to use your phone as a bit of a hub, then you've got Dex, which does work well, even if it is quite a niche feature. So one isn't better than the other. It all comes down to what you want and what other tech you use. But certainly in terms of versatility, and if you are perhaps a more enthusiast phone user, then the S22 Ultra is probably a better choice. So let's wrap up. And while I do maintain that this is the best Android flagship phone you can buy, it's not for everyone. It is big, it is expensive, and if you don't need the S Pen, then you can get, well, better specs for less money if you look elsewhere. And the whole Snapdragon versus Exynos thing is annoying. But this is a Galaxy Note, and there's nothing else out there that can do everything this can. And so if you can afford it, then yeah, I highly recommend it. It is an incredible phone, and I'm having a really good time with it. But what do you make of the S22 Ultra? Have you bought one, or are you planning to? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time right here on the Tech Chat.
Do it again.